Why, hello there. It is 103 days until the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC releases, and this is the Elden Wait countdown, where every day leading up to the DLC release, we are going to talk about the upcoming DLC to make the wait just a little bit shorter. If you would like to join me on this journey to the Shadow of the Erdtree, please subscribe to Lore Hunter and make sure to turn notifications on, because I release videos daily. That way, you could get them as they come out. And today we are back at it, baby. We are talking about some questions, some comments that people put in. I hope you enjoyed my weekend tomfoolery with sort of the Mordecai Elden Ring news throwback, as well as my little thing where I took out the Tree Sentinel, bullied the Tree Sentinel for being the biggest bully in Elden Ring. But we are back to speculating about lore, and I am happy to be here and getting the week going. This is a nice place to be. It is a busy week at work for me, and I'm happy to be talking about this instead of doing work. So let's get into it. This first comment comes from Zarin Bass. I'll put the comment up here so you can see it on the screen. There's a few things about this comment that stuck out to me. Thank you for commenting, Zarin. I like how they talk about the Shadow of the Erdtree is literally meant to represent Marika and Malekith's relationship and sealing something away. And this got me thinking, if Marika has this obscured land, why wouldn't she keep destined death there instead of with Malekith? And I came up with two reasons regarding this. The first one is that before the Night of Black Knives, Malekith was the death of the demigods, was this sort of force, this threat that Marika had over anybody that would oppose her, with Malekith walking around. So I think that's one reason. And the other reason I'm thinking is because whatever is in the Land of Shadow, Marika also doesn't trust it just being there. It needed to be watched over by someone who is completely loyal to her, someone she trusted. So those are my thoughts about why that might be the case. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and just another thing to sort of keep track of and keep in mind, because these are both things where Marika is, as Zarin says, Marika is taking something and obscuring it, hiding it, putting it away so that she can control it. And so thank you for leaving the comment, Zarin. There is also, they have some fun speculation about the end about Marika possibly in the Glowmine Queen being, different facets, polar opposites of each other. You sort of got those old meteor grandpas. I can't remember their name right now. Those dudes, they're kind of like polar opposites of each other. But thank you for the comment. And on to the next comment. In my video about shadows, I discussed about how we don't know if Mikola and Melania have shadows, and Brass Pedals 3 Voices said that it wouldn't surprise them if Torrent turns out to be the shadow of Mikola. And I thought that was kind of an interesting theory. And sort of related to that, it's kind of wild. It'd be interesting to see just how well it feels like this lore from the Shadow of the Erdtree has always been part of Elden Ring. And I think that's probably because, as Miyazaki said, this was something they held aside. This was something they pulled out that they didn't have time or scope for. And it's really wild that really Mikola has been pulling a lot of strings in the background. Mikola being Torrent's former master, giving us the summoning bell, like all this stuff, like spirit stuff, which is also worth keeping in mind, I think. But just that Mikola has been, in our court from moment one, or we've been in Mikola's court. And it's just interesting. And Ronnie is obviously more in support of Mikola's influence than like the Two Fingers. So it's just interesting to think about. So thank you very much for that comment, Brass Pedals. I think that's some very thought-provoking stuff and really fun to consider. And it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. And I'm curious to see, one thing I kind of wondered in the lead up to Elden Ring was if there would be sort of any story arc for Torrent, sort of like Shadow of the Colossus, where you have a bit of story there, not to spoil any of it, but you got some stuff. You got some emotional beats. And Torrent didn't really have that. I wonder if Torrent will get something like that in the DLC. Obviously, they can't really take Torrent away from us, but I am curious if Torrent gets fleshed out at all with the DLC, especially with Mikola in the mix as Torrent's former master. So, be interesting to see. And this last comment for this video, we have a really good one. There's a lot here, and I'm going to put the whole comment up, and I'm going to talk about some things that it prompted from me. But from Michael Johnson 8891 says, historically speaking, the Solomonic Columns, as I mentioned in my video about the Solomonic Columns and sort of diving into that very interesting history, and they rightly point out that it wasn't really a thing until the time of Constantine and became a widespread thing in the Baroque era. But sort of something I was getting at and that they repeat here and sort of elucidate here is how there's the mythology behind the origin of the Solomonic Columns and how it supposedly came from, Jerusalem, from Solomon's temple, this spirally column. And I heard from another architect, I don't have the comment up right now, but I'll put it in an edit, where another architect, thank you very much, came in and commented about how there's also a rumor that these columns, that they had melted down something from the Pantheon of all places in order to build them. And that's really interesting. If you watch that video, I talk about the relationship of the Pantheon to St. Peter's Baldachin and how that just neatly ties in themes of Marika taking these cultures and sort of sucking it up into, her own thing, making it her own, sort of just like historically how Rome, would sort of absorb stuff, how Christianity has absorbed local religious practices across the world and just made it part of their thing just so it worked. That's the Golden Order. That's what Marika was doing too. And there's, that's very much a thing that From Software is obviously sort of pulling from. So any sort of further evidence or interesting examples of that are really cool and interesting. And another aspect of this that this comment brings up that's really was something on my mind, and something that they elucidate really well, is that, this early pulling from the Temple of Solomon and sort of this earlier Jewish tradition, that there was more of the suggestion of there being other gods and stuff like that. So you're thinking about this pre-Erdtree culture. These Solomonic Columns are sort of tying that into me, where if you look at the modern day lands between the Erdtree as more like New Testament, modern Christianity, you can see this pre-Erdtree society as maybe more in the Jewish tradition, Old Testament stuff, so just interesting how it seems like maybe that's something that's being played with a little bit. And especially how that was then taken from these cultures and how it transformed into, the modern day, and modern in this case being the time of the Golden Order, the time of when Rome became Christian, and just how they adopted and adapted these traditions for their own uses. And finally, Michael Johnson, a banger of a comment, thank you so much for leaving it, says at the end how is interesting considering this and how the sacred trees may be an aspect of this. And I believe that Ziostorm also talks about this in a recent video about how this pre-Erdtree society, there could have been general tree worship in a different way that then got changed for the Golden Order. Maybe that's part of what's being obscured in the Shadowlands. And Michael Johnson brings up something that I agree with too, Smotown's theory about how the greater will is not just an outer god, but is this sort of other thing, this more Abrahamic god, and how the DLC in this case may deal with these outer gods, and if we get any more information from all of that, because we see all these crucible aspects, we see a lot of blood stuff going on, fire, briars, there's just a lot of imagery of stuff that has meaning all across the game, and it's it feels like a mishmash, but I feel like it's toward a point and toward an end, and it'll be interesting to see what they're sort of trying to say with all of that. And one last thing, piggybacking off of Michael Johnson's, again, banger of a comment, is mentioning Constantine, and something I cut from the video because I just kind of got rambly in the original video about the Solomonic Columns. But you have Constantine, that is the foundation of Constantinople. You have the Eastern Roman Empire, and you have Byzantine architecture. And this building here is something I haven't been able to quite figure out. I think, though, that you kind of almost have these minaret type details, and I almost feel like this is maybe a little Byzantine in nature, and that is also where the Solomonic Columns seem to be leading to, at least from what I can tell from the trailer. It seems to be there's a trail of them leading to this place. So the Solomonic Columns having a basis in Constantine time, Constantinople, Byzantine architecture and this looking a little Byzantine is just interesting. And if you have any thoughts about any inspirations for this building, potentially, we went over it a little bit before how this front facade for the gateway is very fantastical and not something you really see. But I haven't been able to find a good inspiration for what the building may be pulling from otherwise besides generally sort of Byzantine Romanesque looking architecture. And there you have it, some wonderful comments from the community. The Elden Wait is a conversation, not a lecture, and this video is proof of that, and it just gets the conversation going, and I really sincerely appreciate it. I feel like this is what the Elden Wait is all about. It's the excitement building as we're getting up to something and speculating, and I can't wait to just carry that energy through and keep having these conversations after. I've really been debating. I don't know what to do. But part of me doesn't want to just stop the Elden Wait. Like, it'll have to change forms, but I kind of like this format, and I'm considering maybe carrying this through release and keeping the conversation going. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Please leave me other comments about your speculation, especially with the topics covered today. And yeah, make sure if you want to join me on the wait for the Shadow of the Erdtree to subscribe to the Lore Hunter, turn notifications on so that you can get videos as they come out. Thanks for watching.